Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Welcome everybody to Tiger Claw Radio. I'm your host, Critical Failure. This week, we've got some chip tunes that were submitted to the Winter Chip 16, whatever compilation it is, over on Battle of the Bits. This is courtesy of Hemrock from his zip that he sent of his best chip tunes from that collection, his top picks. I actually have 3 van casts from this past week because it's been an eventful week. Everything from finally unsubscribing to James Rolfe, God bless him, and a piggyback on our NES conversation from last week. All right, so let's get things started with a chip tune. This is from Winter Chip, whatever, I don't know. One of the Winter Chips over at battleofthebits.org, the latest one. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Stick with us. Gox with Curious Cloud, and again, the final release they do of chiptunes, it's good, but a lot of the actual chip-inspired chiptunes don't make the cut. From this collection I got from Hemrock, I mean, he's got songs in here. What's one of the things they do over there? The Mario Paint composer, and that's kind of like a running meme over there, is they'll make Mario Paint composer tracks, and they, of course, they never make the final cut. There's a couple of them here in this folder, which I think was fun. So, long story short, this folder of picks I think is ultimately going to be more chiptune-y than the actual chiptune release they do when they pick the winners. But you know, hey, good times. It's still a great site. They prop up a lot of really good artists. games, so I'm not knocking them. Okay, so let's get to the video games. I was able to record mobily 3 times this past week, and I can't remember what the first one was on. I think it was the CRT one. But anyway, let's go there now. Firing up the Wayback Machine to, I think, the day after I recorded last week's episode. Stick with us. All right, now we got a real van cast, unlike last week. I'm headed home from, I want to say a Craigslist mission, but it's not a Craigslist mission. It's one of the apps that's kind of like it. My wife set it up, actually. The new office, the new Panzer Studios, with some extra tables. She said, "Hey, I got this guy who's giving away a CRT, a nice tube TV, good sized one too, 24 inches, for free." And it was like 3 minutes away from where we were at. So she set it up. I went over and I got it. Really nice gentleman. Just trying to get rid of some things. And now I'm headed home with a CRT in the back of my car, which is really sweet. It's a sweet surprise. Whoop, there she is. Okay, yep. So, I'm glad I still have all my old systems and stuff. And when I was cleaning house, I didn't get rid of anything that I would have wanted to hold on to. So I think the idea is to hook up the Super Nintendo, because she loves Tetris Attack. So I think we might be playing Tetris Attack on this thing, making Super Nintendo the primary choice CRT system. So I think now that I've got more space in the office, I got this TV, it's going to be hooked up with the Super Nintendo, and I have space to acquire things. I think I might be looking at some potentially Super Nintendo games to pick up. I don't know. It's kind of an exciting time, because that's a fun system. I liked playing Super Nintendo with her quite a lot. We did that a lot when we first got married. We played. She's not like the gamer type like I am, but when we first got married, before we had kids and when there was time, we played all the way through Super Mario World on a weekend, which for us was a huge accomplishment. I know you can shotgun through that game super quick if you know what you're doing, but we played all the way through it. And we played a ton of Tetris Attack. We both got really, really good at Tetris Attack. And she got better than me because I moved on to other games and she stuck with it. So the last time we visited Tetris Attack, she was just an absolute killer. What else did we play apart from Tetris Attack and Mario World? Well, we tried some Dr. Mario, I think on the NES a little bit back in those days. That's really all I can think of that we stuck with. Like, I seem to remember playing Mario Kart some, but I don't think that became one of the games that we played. I don't know. It was a good time. I know Tetris Attack was the game for years. Which is why I know that if you play Tetris Attack in versus mode and your match lasts longer than 10 minutes, then the timer freezes and just is stuck at 9 minutes 99 seconds, or 9 minutes 99 count, whatever, because you can't have 99 seconds in a minute. I don't know, it's weird. The timer is weird in Tetris Attack. But that'll be fun to revisit that game and get absolutely stomped. See, I gotta be fearless, because what happens is whenever we revisit this game, I get acclimated a little bit faster than my wife does. So I win like the first couple matches, but then she gets warmed up and she gets super good, and then I never touch her again. So we've got to play, and I've got to enjoy those first couple matches, because that's all I'm gonna get. Alright, I gotta go real slow because I don't want this TV to flop around in the back. It's good times. It's exciting. And you know what? I think I might call that it. I will see you folks back in the studio. I ended up hurting my back carrying that TV upstairs to my office. It was enormous. It was way bigger than we thought it was going to be. Carried it up to my office, sat it down, got it plugged in. Don't know if we're going to keep this thing long term, but I can tell you that it works. What we ended up doing with it was we hooked up a Super Nintendo. There's a Super Nintendo hooked up to it right now. And my son is the only one who's actually sat down and had a session on this machine. I ran it and made sure it worked, but he has been playing Tetris Attack on it, which is like the family game, the family contest, is who's the best at Tetris Attack. So I haven't had the chance to sit down with him and play it, but this past week there was a lot of content. And coming up this episode, there's a lot of content about NES, and most of that is from RetroArch on my TV. But now with this machine, I'm primed to hook up my actual NES, which I haven't done in a while. So yeah, that might be kind of cool. I haven't hooked up an NES to an old tube TV in a long time. I have an old tube TV like prior to this, a small one. But I honestly, when that was getting used, that was when I was doing my real Sega Genesis exploration, and consequently the NES didn't get played much. It was either Sega Genesis or my Famiclone, playing Famicom games, cheap Famicom games that I could get my hands on, whatever it was I could find. Yeah, so actually going back to the NES, good times. We are 11 minutes in, so it's a little early for the 20-minute mark. Let's go ahead and run the next Vancast, because it's been a long time since I've had 3 of them. Stick with us, you're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. I finally unsubbed from James Rolfe's channel on the YouTubans this past week. Now, it had been a while since I watched one of his videos, but it was one of the newer angry video game nerd videos he did, and I still like James, by the way. He's an undeniably talented guy. He's done some undeniably good work in the past. But it's most people look back on his body of work as something that has... It's like The Simpsons, you know? The Simpsons was great at one time. And they just kept making them. And at one point it was like, all right, guys. So I had thought that was the case with James like a couple of years back. And then I was like, all right, well, let's see what he's doing now. And the time that I chose to go back and check was when he did his Polybius video. And if you've ever seen his Polybius video, that is a really, really good video. It was proof that he still has talent and he still has ideas. But I went back recently to look at his video that he put out on the Legend of Kage. Whoa, that one was more like one of his non-videos, I guess you'd say, where there wasn't any sort of insight into the game that made it interesting, nor was there any sort of narrative that he does that makes it interesting. Like Polybius is a story that we've heard before, so he was able to take that, and rather than just tell us the story again, he made a little, movie, kind of. Didn't get that on this one. I don't know, man. First of all, I like that game. There was nothing there for me, but at the same time, it's like, it hurt, man. It hurt. I was like, I don't watch this anymore. So I hit the unsubscribe button. The reason I'm going over this on the air is because I'm hoping somebody will tell me I'm wrong and call me out on it and tell me, oh, you got to check this, that, or the other out. And that's the reason why you're wrong, and that's the reason why it's still worth going back to his site to check out. My ears are open for that message. So if that's the case, please let me know. I just reached a point where on YouTube I had to kind of clean out my subscriptions a little bit and pull out some of the people that I'm not watching. For the most part, that refers to like gaming, like not related to gaming stuff. Like I had a lot of music channels that I was subscribed to, where they put out videos and I just wouldn't even consider watching them. When I'd look at my subscriptions list, it was almost like I didn't see those videos. My brain had just been trained to look past them to find the content I wanted. And while I was going through doing that was the moment I came across old James and his latest work. So I don't know, that one kind of stung a little bit, because like what do you watch now? Who's out there worth watching and worth listening to these days? Let me know, because I don't know. I can't think of a place that's consistently has entertaining stuff like back in 2008, when it was normal for a YouTube channel to take 2 or 3 weeks to put out a video, and that was okay. It comes across as a little depressing now that I say it out loud, but I don't know. It's not that bad, right? Last week we talked a little bit about must-have games on the Nintendo, and we were centered around games that didn't cost a lot. But I was poking around in my collection, and I sat down with Contra again, the original Contra. That's another game that, like, I don't know, I think the internet culture has sort of changed my opinion. Not changed my opinion of the game, because it's still an amazing game, but it's changed the way I look at it, because a lot of times I don't see the awesome game anymore. I more think about, like, scalpers talking about how much it's worth. But I actually sat down with the actual game and played it. Not for a super long time, but man, I had a lot of fun. My older brother was able to say when we were kids that he was able to get through that whole game without using the code, the 30-man code. These days, I mean, you hear people who do that, like at the drop of a hat or whatever. But I had never done it, so I loaded it up and I did it without using the code. I made it to, without taking a hit, I got all the way up to, I say all the way, but not that far. I got to like the waterfall stage. I got to the boss of the waterfall stage, and there was a complete meltdown. Then I lost like a whole bunch of lives all at once, because I think I'd built up 4 lives by that point. And from there, all the traction was gone. I couldn't get anywhere. But this is, like 10 minutes of gameplay or whatever it is, so it was cool to go back and play Contra again for what it was. Because Contra was my first real local multiplayer game ever. When I was younger, I remember it being sort of like a magic thing that we could both play that game, my brothers and I, at once. And I remember doing tricks like in the waterfall stage, in the beginning, how you have those boulders that fall down from the sky, or fall down from holes in the waterfall. We would get I can't remember exactly how we did it, but somehow we would get the more powerful guns, and we would stand under those and just farm them. One at a time, just shoot each boulder for points until we built up lives. And it took an unfortunately long amount of time. I wasn't willing to do that in this case. But I can say that I didn't save scum either. I played it legit. Every loss I took, just to see how far I could get. I don't know. It was a good time. That's a game I would go back to. It was fun to revisit it as it was intended, as opposed to as it is in the context of like internet videos now. Another great example of this is Mega Man 2. Man, what a good game. It's Mega Man 2, right? But when I hear the song, I don't think about Mega Man 2 anymore. I think about like Bob Chipman putting on costumes in his basement. Because I feel like the soundtrack for Mega Man 2 has been co-opted by internet culture. And I know I do the same thing. Right? Goonies 2 was my theme for years and years. But those are just some observations. I would like to point out, based on this, that I've learned that if you feel like a game has been co-opted in that way, you can reclaim it. Just sit down and play it again. All right. Back again in the studio, we're going to revisit the winter chip choices from Hemrock. But before that, let's just take a quick minute to thank the sponsors. This is a Patreon-sponsored program. These gentlemen give of their resources to keep the lights on every single week and have been innumerously patient. So I tip my hat to them. They are Hemrock, EmeraldRangers.com, Tecmoballs, Darabka, and Eric Controller. Thank you guys so much. I hope you're enjoying the party. And let's do some more chip tunes. Stick with us. We'll be back. That's Majesty with the system. Hemrock, can you just do the final choices? You know how like when they do, can you just arrange the final track list whenever they do a major competition like this? Because this track that you just heard right now, first of all, that is clearly a Game Boy sound chip. The file name says .gbs, so that's kind of a giveaway. But that's clearly like a really good LSDJ track. And on top of that, probably not going to see it on the final track listing, which is a travesty. It's awful. But really, really good pick. Good chiptune from Majesty and good Majesty 14, excuse me, and good pick from Hemrock. All right, we have one more quick Vancast, an actual Vancast from this past week, and then more awesome stuff when we come back. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Stick with us.
It's late night with CF. Whoa, we are Vancasting. It is 9:02 p.m. and I'm in the car headed out to Crack Donald's so I can get myself a McFlurry to try and cope with the sadness. Woo! Ba-da-ba-ba-ba! I can't wait for death. Oh yeah. Quite a day. I played some old NES games. Whoa! I talked about it a little bit on the previous little bit I recorded on my phone, but I played some Contra, which was great. A little disappointed I wasn't able to get any further than that, but that's okay. Actually, going back and revisiting some of those old games that I've known about forever, that are like staples of classic gaming that I never actually beat myself. And I think Contra is one of them, because I beat Contra many times over playing, the two-player mode. And I've beaten it many times over using the extra man trick or whatever, the 30-man trick, the classic Konami code. But I've never beaten it just straight up. So that one's on my list. And a couple other games that I'm interested in going back and playing more would be, one is Blaster Master, which came up recently. And I had Blaster Master forever. It's one that's always been on my radar, and I remember the first time I played it being really impressed with it, but I never got far in it or really, got as hooked as other people. So I don't have the same connection with it that some some NES gamers who remember it very, very fondly. So to put it into context, and I've told this story before, there was a particular event, a milestone event that happened. I can't remember exactly how old I was, but I'm going to guess like 15 or 16. Because my dad passed when I was 14, and I moved out on my own when I was 17. So this was sometime between those two things. And at this time, this is when I was collecting Nintendo games, hardcore. This is really when the foundation was being laid for me being a retro gamer. PlayStation was cool, NES was not cool. You could get the NES games everywhere, but I didn't have a lot of money because I still lived at home. My good friend Angie, who I've known since third grade, yeah. He was also into, what was considered modern gaming at the time, PS1 and N64 and all that stuff. He had an NES. No, I'm sorry. He did not have an NES. But he had a bunch of NES games that were just sitting on the shelf, just unplayed, uncared for. They were not something he was concerned about anymore. So I, it was like, hey man, I had this NES. I'm going down to the, to the exchange and buying a game from the pawn shop every week. You doing anything with those? He was like, yeah, no man, all yours. So he gives me his NES games, and we're talking about maybe, to give it a number, say, it's a good bit. It's like between 10 and 20 Although I can't remember a number. But Blaster Master was one of the games in that box. Okay? So I first experienced Blaster Master playing it in a box of classic games. Now, the vast majority of the games in that box I was playing for the very first time. That's how I first encountered a live copy of Metroid. Although I couldn't get that particular copy working. But Metroid was in that box. Metal Storm was in that box, which is a game I held on to for decades before I finally just gave it back to him. Because we didn't know it was going to be a big money game. So Metal Storm was a game that stuck. Another game that really left an impression from that box was Ghosts and Goblins. First time I ever played Ghosts and Goblins was in that box, and it had a copy of Excite Bike and a copy of Kung Fu, which is a game that even back then I really liked. This was a big box of games, and a lot of the games in it left an impression. Well, one of them was Blaster Master, and it just got overlooked. This is coming off the tail end of the era where it took a lot to get a video game. So even if the game was bad, if you got it, you were going to spend some time with it. This was coming off the tail end of it. This might even be like my first experience getting like a mass of games, because that kind of thing didn't happen back then, at least not for me. Now, Angie and I have encountered Blaster Master in the wild together since then, particularly at MagFest. I remember sitting down once and watching him play it, and he knew where to go. He knew what Blaster Master was, but I never really, I never really played it beyond just like a quick check, go to, quick look around, get to the first cave or whatever, and that's about it. I don't know. It's a game that requires some exploration, a lot like Goonies 2. And I think it got overlooked in favor of games that were more straightforward, which is terrible. It sounds awful. Also, for what it's worth, in that time period, I thought the original Game Boy was the best thing in the world, because I got these NES games, but like probably 1 year, maybe two prior to that, my older brother had a DMG, like a brick Game Boy, the original model Game Boy, and he had a Game Boy, and he had a black fanny pack filled with gray cart Game Boy games before Game Boy Color came out, and I just did whatever I could to play that thing as much as possible. It wasn't mine, it was my brother's, and he was very rightfully stingy about letting me play it. Because I was a brat and I was an awful little brother. But my goodness, that was what I thought the real grail in gaming was at the time, was the original Game Boy, which is to this day why I love my Game Boy. I can't really think of a game on the NES that I put a ton of focus into. I would play these short session games and then bounce between them. Pretty similar to what I do now. So now that I'm actually going back to revisit some of those old games instead of just like watching videos about them, Blaster Master is high on my list to go back and really revisit and check it out. Alright, let's see. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay. So that's NES in a nutshell. Contra was good. I sat down with... one of the things I've been having problems with is when I play emulation these days, I've been playing on RetroArch, the Steam implementation of RetroArch. And I'm having some trouble with the way, like, it's a great front end. I like it. But I'm having some trouble with the way it deals with controllers. I need to be able to set controllers with their own like button layout that's unique to each emulator, right? Like, so if I'm sitting down with just to make it easier to picture, let's just say I have a USB Super Nintendo controller. I don't, but let's just say that's what I'm working with. If I sit down and play on a Super Nintendo emulator, it's got to be bound a certain way, right, to make it feel normal. But if I want to use that same controller on Nintendo, I've got to change the buttons. There's a couple of different ways to do it. Here we go. Hang on one second. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Yeah, it's Oreo time. What do we got here? Oreo McFlurries. I gotta say what you will about old Crack Donald's. I like the curbside pickup. I wish a better restaurant had this sort of app and curbside pickup service. But yeah, their app is great. So what was I talking about? Wow, it all just completely went out of my head. Wow, that sucks. It all just went right out of my head. Oh my gosh. Oh, yeah. So what happened was with the controllers, the reason why that matters is because I got this USB Atari stick. To be specific, it is a Hyperkin, the same company that makes like the Retron 5 and all that stuff. They made an Atari joystick, like a clone of the original Atari 2600 joystick, but they made a USB version. It looks very similar, except it has, instead of just having the button on one side, it's got it on both sides, and then it has a little start and select button on the side, because you might remember, the Atari 2600, it's got the game switch and reset buttons directly on the machine. So, you can kind of rig it up like that, but it still sort of feels like an Atari stick. It feels really good, like really good. I've got some issues with the compatibility, so that's been an issue. And basically, the long story short, I plugged it into RetroArch and I set it up so that when I played the Stella emulator or whatever their Atari emulator it is, it would be all set up to use this joystick. But then when I switched back to play Nintendo games recently, all the buttons were all messed up, which kind of sucked. I don't know. Maybe I just don't know how to RetroArch very well. What are you going to do? But I'm going to eat this here ice cream, and then I'm going to go back home and watch some wrestling on my phone, because I'll be too tired to make it up to my office. I will see you guys tomorrow on podcast day when I put all this crap together. Thanks for listening. It's meme time! Hooray! This is Menagerie Jamboree from Blue Nocturne. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Please forgive me.
Before we head over to the fail bag this week, I wanted to make a quick mention of what's going on with Community Mod General Electronic. I've mentioned it a couple times on the air, but I tend to keep it separate from TCR because this is like synth stuff, and the music nerd people tend to be different people than my video game people. But I'll mention it here anyway. I'm working on my second compilation of Acid Trance 303 inspired tracks. I did one of these like 6 months ago, and it ended up being 8 tracks, and it was really, really good. Well, this one's going to be pushing 2 hours because I was able to meet a lot of really awesome people, and it's going to be amazing when it comes out. They're always free. Everything on CME is always free, so that's slated for release early April. So I would imagine like a week or two, it'll be all set. And I'll let you know when that's out if you want to get some good techno stuff for free. Meet some people who are actually out there that you can talk to, as opposed to, high entertainment mogul millionaires. All right, but let's shift gears and see what we got in the fail bag.
All right. Hemrock checks in. Greetings, CF. Thank you, as usual, for another episode. Glad to see that you quickly got back into the podcasting lane again. How's your new studio treating you? Will this impact Tiger Claw Radio and Tiger Claw TV? How will this impact Tiger Claw Radio and Tiger Claw TV? I suggest you give it a new name, but do as you like. I agree. I do think this needs a new name. I'll have to think about it, though. I don't want to go off half-cocked on the air again. We'll see what happens. As far as how it's going to affect Tiger Claw Radio and Tiger Claw TV, I don't know. I've got more room to actually play games, which was a difficult thing to do in the old studio. Because of the expanded room, that's the reason I was able to play a lot of the content that I talked about this past week. So the effect will be mostly indirect, but it'll be all positive. Let's get back to the email. He says, I feel you on Battle of the Bits, promoting music that's not your style. A lot of it's not my style either. But in this rough landscape, there are definitely diamonds to be found, especially in the winter and summer track compilations. Speaking of Battle of the Bits, did you like my selection from the most recent winter chip compilation that I sent you in the last email? That's what we've been listening to, the chiptunes of this episode. Yeah, it's been great. So thanks for that. It made things a lot easier here because I had a big bank of like quality chiptunes that I was able to check out. So I never had to do that thing where I'm scraping the internet trying to find artists that I can play on TCR. Yeah, it was really awesome. He says, I'm slowly working my way on my top 30 of the 8-Bit Collective. I'm nearing the halfway point in terms of listening to the tunes. Good luck. I'm interested to hear what that is a mighty undertaking. There's a lot of music in that collection. I thought the failbag question about inexpensive NES games was an excellent one. I did a bit of a deep dive on good but cheap NES games, checking compared listings on eBay for prices. I tried keeping it around the $10 mark or less. Here's my recommendations. If you're into pinball, you can't go wrong with Rollerball or even the original Pinball Black Box game. Both run around $8 each. Shooters, or shmups as for the cool kids, Adventures of Dino Ricky at $9, Gyrus at $10, Alpha Mission at $10, Dragon Spirit at $12. A lot of good picks in that list. Gyrus is a classic. I remember playing that. I remember playing an arcade version while camping as a kid, and I always played it chasing that old memory. Even as a youngster, I was like, that time we went camping. Gyrus is a good game. But Dragon Spirit, oh man. I realize it's $2 over your $10 limit, but Dragon Spirit's a game that's worth it. It really is. Whatever it is they did to the NES version in order to make that port work makes it the best port, in my opinion. That's coming from someone who's never sat down with the TurboGrafx 16 port, because I know people really like that one too. But Dragon Spirit's an awesome game. I got lucky and I got my copy in a cardboard box at a mall probably like 7 or 8 years ago, and I think it was only like $2 or something. It was very cheap. I got a deal on my copy of Dragon Spirit. It's a great game. Action platformers, Astyanax, aka that game with an unpronounceable title, at $8, Star Tropics at $9, Wizards and Warriors 2 at $9, and Blaster Master at $13. Seeing Blaster Master on this list is what sent me down that rabbit hole of my experience with the game and wanting to revisit it. So I knew this was going to be in the failbag segment, so I didn't want to talk about the whys and wherefores too much. But yeah, people really like Blaster Master, and there's a lot I haven't tried with it. You talk about action platformers, there are a number of good ones. I personally like The Legend of Kage. I like that game. It's not a long play. It's a quick game. But I know that's got to be $10 or less because people hate that game. Kung Fu is also a really good game. If you're okay with simple, $10 or less for sure, no doubt about that. Other good action, because I just got finished playing Contra, so that's all that's sticking in my head, and I know that game is most unfortunately not cheap anymore. But let's read on. Puzzlers, Loops at $9 and Dr. Mario at $10. Dr. Mario is a perennial classic. That is like one of the bar none multiplayer games that every NES collector should have. Arcade type action, we've got Spy Hunter at $8, Millipede at $9, Defender 2 at $9, City Connection at $10. What an awesome pick, City Connection. And Elevator Action at $11. City Connection is an awesome game. It's a game that has deserved way more attention than it's got. Throughout the retro reviewer boom, I remember seeing a couple of people who really did it justice. I think one was called The Daft Gamer. I don't know if that video is still around, but he did a really good early City Connection video years and years ago. Love that game. That was a game that I never really saw in real life and didn't get to experience until the emulation days. But now, especially seeing it on your list, realizing it's only $10, I should probably add it to my NES collection. Elevator Action for $11. That's one I have a love-hate relationship with. I have a copy of Elevator Action that I've had since I was a kid or since I was a teenager, and it doesn't have a label. So I got it on the cheap. But the thing is, I first played Elevator Action on the Game Boy. It's one of those games that's been on a lot of different systems, and it's been remade a number of different times. I think most notably there's a version on the Sega Saturn that's pretty modernized and pretty sleek. And then I usually get to play some sort of version at MagFest in the arcade. I don't know what system that's on, but on one of the candy cabs, there's usually some sort of Elevator Action running. But I was used to the Game Boy version, which has some more stuff in it. A little bit more of a complex game. Not a lot more complex, but a little bit more. So when I played the NES version, I felt kind of let down. And I was really too young to understand that that's just what it was. That's just how the port worked. So it is a good game, but sort of a love-hate relationship with. I believe on the PS3, wasn't there like a free Elevator Action game that was really good too? I can't quite remember. It's been a while. But all good picks for arcade-type action. One game that is precariously absent, and I don't know if it's priced in your range, but the original Gauntlet for NES was super slick as well. How much does that go for? Gauntlet NES. Can't be too much. We're running the search right now so we can get a good price. I forgot the internet has been... Yeah, that is a thing that's going to affect TCR, is the place in my new office where I have the tower set up. Because I'm on Wi-Fi, it's really faulty here. So I have to move where my tower is, and that's going to be a problem. Like, I'm trying to load eBay right now, run a quick search, and it's dragging, I think, because the Wi-Fi is dropping. So, yeah, that's a problem. I'm hoping Gauntlet doesn't cost a lot. It shouldn't. But while that's running, let's get back to the email. We'll check on Gauntlet in a second. Talking about cheap NES games. Yeah, here we go. Sports games. Super Spike V-Ball / Nintendo World Cup Soccer. That's a 2 for the price of 1 for $9. Awesome game. Ice Hockey for $8. Congrats on mentioning another awesome game that gets overlooked a lot. Blades of Steel for $8. And RC Pro-Am for $9. All 4 of those, with the exception of Blades of Steel, didn't play that one much, are all games that were on my radar growing up and are worth owning, especially Super Spike V-Ball and Nintendo World Cup, because Nintendo World Cup Soccer, that's a Technos Japan game. That's the River City Ransom type Ricky Kunio Kunio-kun games type things, and I loved every single one of those games, no matter what they were about. Crash and the Boys Street Challenge is another one, starring them, another sports game for the NES that I don't care. I think that game's awesome. I don't know how much it costs, though. It might not be in the cheap range. I'm looking up Gauntlet now. Gauntlet looks like it's averaging around $10, but you can find it for cheaper. Yeah, here's one for $5. That can't be right. Authentic Gauntlet, free shipping, buy now, $5. Yeah, somebody must be dumping that one. I don't know if you can call that. Oh no, yeah, there we go. Shipping is another $5. That makes it 10. That makes it 10. Perfect. That's a really good price for Gauntlet. $10 in my opinion. Yeah, I would add Gauntlet to that list. Gauntlet 2 for $11. I don't know if I've ever actually owned Gauntlet 2. It's a good game. All right. I'm sliding off track here. Yeah, how much is Crash and the Boys Street Challenge? Because that's one I might actually buy. Crash and the Boys. Let's see what we got. I'm getting nothing. I must have spelled something wrong. NES Crash. Try one more time. Crash and the Boys Street Challenge. Yeah, it's an expensive game. There's a bidding war going on this one that's currently sitting around $25. Nice label, $40, $50. Yeah, don't pay that much for Crash and the Boys Street Challenge. Fun game. It's not that fun. Jeez. Just stop it already. Get it off of Steam. The Steam version's pretty good. No, there isn't a Steam version. There's other Kunio-kun games, but not that one. I don't know. Whatever. Let's get back to the email and move on. Brawlers. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at $10 and Double Dragon at $15. You listed the first TM. You just said TMNT. What about TMNT 2? right? The arcade version. TMNT2. Is that out of price range? It's a little high. Okay, TMNT2 is a little high. Looks like it's coming in at $15 plus. But I thought TMNT2 on the NES was miles ahead of the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. I had Manhattan Project too, but I didn't get to play that very much because I didn't get it until like the end, really, of me being into NES games. So I remember getting Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Manhattan Project, putting it in, playing it, saying, yes, this game is a keeper, putting it aside, and then never playing it. It's a very early example of that happening, which is something that most of us ended up doing a lot later in life. Then we come to RPGs. It's a tall order to find decent, cheap RPGs. And he lists Faxanadu at $10, Ultima Exodus at $11, and Willow at $18 being the most expensive game on this list. Any other games you would like to add, CF? Was that question from a recent post on GameFAQs? No, it was a question from another website. But let's look at... Give me a second. What about the original Dragon Warrior? Right, that's not an expensive game. I know that later ones in the series get expensive, but and there's some contention over whether or not that's a worthwhile game. Yeah, there you go, $10. There's some contention over whether or not it's worthwhile to play the original Dragon Warrior because it is flawed. But I say play it. It's fun. It's way grindy. It has some severe issues, but it's fun. And isn't that really what it's all about? I personally like Wizardry, and there's no way that's a lot of money for the NES. I guess it's a little higher than I remember being. I'm seeing a couple for $10. Without diving too much into the rabbit hole, Wizardry and Wizardry 2 on the NES are that's particularly good places to play that game. I seem to remember there being like a Might and Magic game. But no, that must be Sega Genesis. Was there a Might and Magic game on the NES? Might and Magic NES. Let's see. Yeah, there is, but it's not cheap. We're looking at complete in box, $150, but who wants it complete in box? I just cart only. The Famicom game is $65. Okay, so it must have been Japan only. And the NES versions I'm seeing are like reproductions. Yeah, not a repro, no manual. Yeah, what are you going to do? There was Might and Magic, but it's not cheap. Alright. Yeah, so those are a few cheap NES games. And I'm sure if I went down and scraped against the wall where I have all my NES games hanging, there are more, but that's just a few from having a quick look. You spoke about looking for an Android device for video streaming and maybe some emulation. I have the NVIDIA Shield TV for years, and it's been outstanding. Highly recommended. Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. So I did some research. The one everyone raves about is the NVIDIA Shield Pro. That's the one it's just like the one you have, but it's a little bit more gaming oriented. It has a nice controller with it and everything. It's $200. That's a lot. That's a lot. But it's the kind of system that I want to have. So I'm kind of waffling about it. But here's what stops me from getting an NVIDIA Shield Pro. If I'm going to spend $200 for a system, I kind of feel like it should be like a used NES, or not NES, but a used like Nintendo Switch. Even though I'm personally not super into the Switch, my kids really, really are. So I feel like I should be like, would be my opportunity to be the hero dad, and getting an NVIDIA Shield TV Pro would be blowing it. So when it comes to the Android solution, it is probably gonna be a lower cost solution. How is the Shield TV? What have you done with it? Have you done any emulation? I've heard good things about it for video, but how does it stack up EMU wise? You spoke a little bit about Goonies 2 in the last episode. Did you ever have problems with the password system? You know, a little bit. But here's the thing. Goonies 2 is a non-linear game that's designed around finding all of the items. So the big complaint about the Goonies 2 password system is once you find... when you put the password in, it puts you back at the very beginning. Okay, which does suck. Don't get me wrong. But if you know the layout of the game, you can use the items that you've acquired to get rapid progress. Like, you can get back to where you were very quickly. But it takes a knowledge of the game. The first time you restart with a password, it's a problem. So I knew this from a very young age because I played Goonies 2 in the era when it was just me and my brothers, and we really had the time to rip apart a game like that. And I, on their turn, I would sit and watch them play. So we had time to, punch and hammer every wall and floor and ceiling and really find everything. So, to answer your question, no, not really. There are problems with it, but I never really had them. Here's some retro news. SNK has released the Neo Geo Pocket Color Collection on the Nintendo Switch. I hope it comes to Steam and allows access to the raw ROM files like the Sega Collection does. 8-Bit Music Power has released another NES tape to feature their music. Actually, I want to look at these two things. I heard about the Neo Geo Pocket Color collection. I never really played the Neo Geo Pocket Color, but if it came out on an attainable system, I would get it. And I'm talking about getting a Switch that my kids can play. I would probably get it for that. How much do they want for it? It's available for download today at 39 euros. Nah, I'm not going to get that. I'm okay. What was the other thing? 8-Bit Music Power? Not familiar. Trying to load it up, but my internet is lagging. There's a newish retro-inspired movie. Go check it out. Alright, let's pop that open. And we'll see if it can load. The site can't be reached. Your Webernet is down. And there's free games on GOG. I know they've had some free games kicking around for some time. However, I believe they've added this to the inventory recently, which include Jill of the Jungle. Maybe this one's been on there for a while. Star Gunner, Biomenace, Warwind, Shadow Warrior, and Kingdom Under Fire soundtrack. Yeah, a couple of those I know have been on there for a while. Jill of the Jungle, Star Gunner, and Biomenace have all been on there for a while. I think they were forced to make Shadow Warrior free at some point because it was free on Steam. Remember the story about Shadow Warrior? They did some Facebook promo where if you liked it on Facebook, they would give you a code for it on Steam, and like 20,000 people did it. And instead of like pulling the plug on their promotion, they were like, fine, if you want the game so badly, guess what? Now it's free. Then they just made it free, which was the awesomest thing I think I've ever seen, especially from a major like video game distributor. So when that happened, you could get it for free on Steam, but it cost money on GOG. So somewhere along the line, they must have had to make it free in order to keep up. Don't know. To this day, it's still free on Steam, but if you get it now, if you get the free version now, it has a little teaser that's like, yes, this is free, but go buy the HD version at some point. Yeah, and you know what? The free version is good because I got it and I put a bunch of hours into that free version. I made a few guides on the Steam version, and it does come with the level editor, which is really cool. So I want to make some videos about that level editor because it's a lot of fun, but not at all user-friendly. It's the kind of thing you could own this game and never know that it's there, let alone how to use it. So, I don't know. Good stuff. What's the status of the Retro Junk Box? I have to mail it. I'm going to be doing that very, very soon. I'm so sorry. Have you played against your son's Magic the Gathering deck? How did it go? I have not yet. He put it on his nightstand, and it tipped over the back and spilled out underneath the nightstand, and he has not put it together yet. But yeah, that would be fun to play some Magic the Gathering, especially today. Today's a really good day for it. Hope all is well. I'm rooting for you. Hamrock. Bring back Monday Night Morrowind. Rip Suikoden review. Good to hear from you, brother. Thanks for writing in. Hope you're doing well. Really good email. A lot of good NES games in there. Good buyer's guide if you're new to the NES. With that, let's jump over to YouTube and check it out. I don't think I honestly, over the past few weeks, I haven't been getting a whole lot of comments on YouTube, but I think there's a couple. Give me a second here. There we go. I got the YouTube studio open now. Let's drop back just a little bit. Wow, I have more than I thought I had. Desm 101 writes, I like the Goonies games. I have both the Famicom and NES game. They're both pretty cool. I also love the movie, of course. I don't always mind backtracking. It can work well sometimes. Yeah, something about Goonies too. They did a really good job making the different areas themed, like bright colors and different music. So it's like, wow, I found the cavern, but it's blue. It's the blue cavern. Oh, I found like the dragon place. I don't know. It's a lot of different places in Goonies too. The environment changed up quite a lot. Yeah, Desm, retro box coming your way. I'm doing the best I can to get it out the door, so be on the lookout for that. Demez writes, true story, bro. I beat Goonies 2 on NES with no guides, no Nintendo Power, no cheats, no instruction manuals. It was by far my greatest achievement. The game is literally nearly impossible. I was sick at home from school back in the day, and I just played and finally figured it all out and beat it. Might have been the only one on Earth who has done this. If you know how cryptic some of the required puzzles are, there's no clues for some of it, but randomly messing with things, and I got lucky eventually. You know what, Demez? I believe you. Do you know why? Because I did it too. No guides, nothing. The only advantage I had that you didn't was when we were exploring the game, I played it with my 2 older brothers, and we did it all the time. So I was able to take notes and stuff while they were playing. It's the only advantage I had that you didn't. But we definitely did it with no guides or anything like that. Mecha Menace replies with, Mylon is pretty random. Like, hit every square random. We didn't get Duraga over here, but that game requires a lot of esoteric knowledge to beat. Heck, I'd even add Zelda 1 to that list because its tiles revealing caves or hidden features have no distinguishing features. Yeah, I would agree with that. Zelda 1 is a game I know pretty well just because it's such a classic, but I don't know how I would figure any of that stuff out. A good way to test that theory is to try playing a Zelda 1 ROM hack where everything's remixed and put in different places. It's pretty difficult, to say the least. Mecha Menace writes, are there leads to your audio equipment tin or gold? The static you often get may be caused by using tin leads. Just twisting them can cause static. I use gold as much as possible. Can you still do a vancast? Can't you still do a vancast while picking up bananas? No, I don't, because I don't pick up bananas before work anymore, because I work from home now. You want to list a common NES games for that kid? At heart, in my experience, asking people to pull out the old dusty shoebox at a garage sale will result in me seeing the following plastic squares. Most of these would run about $20 more since the demand is higher. Quality, you be the judge, but here's one thing I know about CF. He loves running through lists. Yes, indeed, that's true. Mario 1, 2, 3, 2 less often, but it's still pretty common. Tetris, Dr. Mario, Bubble Bobble, RC Pro-Am, Rad Racer, Batman, Mega Man 2, Zelda 1 and 2, Monopoly, and one of the Jeopardy games. Good luck getting any of that from the online eBay situation, with the exception, I would say, of Rad Racer. Maybe, I don't know, maybe some of the other ones. Rad Racer is a good game. Anticipation or concentration, Paperboy, Tiger Heli, Play Action Football, Major League Baseball, Top Gun, Blades of Steel, DuckTales, Chippendale, Faxanadu, Excitebike, Ghosts and Goblins. I had an inkling that should have been on that last list, but I let it go because Ghosts and Goblins is another game that I like it, but it is frustrating in an unfair sort of way. Then we have Little Nemo, Mickey Mousecapade. Mickey Mousecapade, really? I know that game exists, but I wouldn't add that to any must-have list. Double Dragon 1, 2, a Double Dribble, Gauntlet, either Tengen or Gray, RBI 1, Goonies, I assume you mean Goonies 2, Ninja Gaiden, Akari Warriors, Commando, Rygar, Pac-Man, Skate or Die, TMNT 1 or 2, Tecmo Ball, Legacy of the Wizard, Renegade, Legacy of the Wizard's a good pick. Blaster Master, Fester's Quest, Kung Fu, Golf, Pinball, Go-Go 13, Spy Hunter, Marble Madness, another good pick, especially for 2 players. TNC Surf Designs, Iron Sword, Wizards and Warriors. Interesting note, Fortress of Fear on the Game Boy is Wizards and Warriors 10. There's Wizards and Warriors 3 on the NES, but there are 6 missing chapters. If Rare had some cojones, they would release the hidden chapters as a new game. They could make it their God of War 3D beat 'em up, but less beat 'em uppy and more exploring and uncovered secrets. Simpson games other than Bartman. Squares you'd think I'd see more of, but actually don't. Ice hockey and any other Mega Man game other than Mega Man 2. No, that fits. That's about what I'd expect. Not ice hockey. That I find surprising. But Mega Man, I'm not surprised those don't turn out much. Castlevania 1, probably could have added Castlevania 2 to the commons list. Mario Brothers the arcade. Gonna call baloney on that one. I guess to be fair, you're talking about yard sales, but the arcade Mario Brothers, I went after that game recently, and unless you're a yard sailor, get ready to pay $25, bro. Black box titles other than Kung Fu Golf Pinball, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, same deal. Kirby, same deal. Ghostbusters, Star Wars, or Empire Strikes Back, Home Alone. You may question a commons list being this long, but this rolls off my head, and I know there are ones I'm leaving off because my eyes glaze over them as they run through their box. Let me those Nintenders. This is what my basement cooked up. Enjoy. The NES was, at the time, king. Hundreds of titles were available, and they made enough for everyone to have. Usually, yes, I know about the chip shortage. Let's talk Sega Genesis Commons next time. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Sega Genesis Commons. We're going to go over that next week. What are your Sega Genesis Commons, Braz? Yeah, because I don't know. I know way less about the Sega Genesis libraries, which is one of the things that made it so fun to explore as an adult. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen a Sega game in the wild, but then again, I don't go hunting anymore. Thanks for checking in, Mega Menace. Hope you're doing well, brother. Demez. Got a bunch from Demez, who hasn't checked in a while, so that was really cool. Must be a fan of Goonies 2. He left some more. I always wondered about Goonies 2. Even more mysterious where were the 12 Golgo games and the first 9 Malcolm movies? I can't start with Malcolm 10. X. In my house growing up, there was no such thing as my video game. They were expensive items. It was ours. The kids, me, and brother. Even if, for example, I begged for Superman for Atari 2600, it's better than NES Superman, bro. Mom and Dad bought it for me because I wanted it, but it becomes the ownership of me and my brother. And when we want to sell the game or trade it in, it's a joint decision. I think it's a good way to manage stuff like this, and we're always going to share a ton anyway. And one cannot get all whiny and try and pull that top card of, well, if you want to play you can't play my game because I'm mad at you, kind of BS. Yeah, I remember that being a thing when I was a kid. You can't play my game because I'm mad at you. You can defeat Double Dragon Arcade 1/4 cost by using 100% elbow smash on everything. I used to do it all the time. Very long amount of time to stretch out my arcade budget. For 2/4, I could beat Monsterland in about 45 minutes, and Double Dragon maybe 20 minutes or more, 20 more minutes or so. A full hour on 2/4, and then often 2/4 was all I could squeeze out of my mom. Yeah, I tried to do that on a Raspberry Pi that they had set up at MagFest. They had a great big arcade stick that was made out of marble, and it was running a Raspberry Pi, and I remember playing the original Double Dragon on it, and somebody came up and showed me that trick about elbow smashing everything. Yeah, it's good times. I did a quick video last week about something in RPG Maker XP. Sometimes people on those forums ask like simple questions that I know the answers to, so I'll just make a quick video to try and make it easy. And Chuck Johnson, a.k.a. Kid Thunder, who, by the way, was from way back in the day, he says, I remember having that issue when I worked on Kaburki ages ago using RM2K3. You helped me back then on it. The game itself is in development hell, and I ended up bringing it back using VX Ace and released it February 2018. Are you going to revisit or do a remake of Kolteka anytime soon? I can be the composer if you want me to. I responded back to him basically, Kolteka was a game that I made on Don Miguel's RPG Maker 2000. It's a remake of a game my friend made from years and years ago. It's like a game he made several times over. Anytime a new RPG Maker got in his hands, he would make a version of Kolteka. So Kolteka was like my version of my friend's game. I put out a demo for it that's on rpgmaker.net. It's still there to this day. Probably 10 years ago, and it took me about 30 hours to make, and there's like 1 to 2 hours of gameplay in it. it did pretty well at the time. But yeah, same thing I told him. I have RPG Maker 2000 on Steam. That's how I have it these days. But the Don Miguel projects are simply not compatible, and I have tried to do that. So I would, if I was going to revisit RPG Maker, it'd be from scratch. So would definitely like to do a collaboration. And he said, absolutely, definitely love a collab. So I've been working on some projects that hopefully I'll be able to show off in the near future. Good to hear from you, though, man. Hope you're doing well. Demez says, I had a bunch of fun with Might and Magic 3, Isles on Terra, on SNES with the mouse. It works awesome with the mouse and played better than Might and Magic 1 on Amiga. Hamrock says, FYI, volume is a bit low on that RPG Maker video. Yeah, I know. I noticed that in the end, but there was no time to do it over. And I was just like, you know what? This video answers the question, and that's what it set out to do, so I just went with it. Light Studios, good old Sendu checks in and says, so this new office, what was the room originally? Well, it was my son's bedroom. So I had my office on one side, and my son's bedroom was on the other side. And my office was small, and my son's bedroom was big. And I was crammed into my office and didn't have enough room, and my son had tons of room in his bedroom and wasn't using any of it, so we switched. And you know what? We're both happier. He has his plenty of room to do all the stuff that he typically does, and my office during the weekend is like the kids' play area, so he comes in here and has plenty of room to play, and it's turned out to be a great move for everybody. But yeah, it was his bedroom previously. I think that is the fail bag. Just making sure I'm not missing anything. Indeed it is. And that's the show for this week. Thanks very much for tuning in, everybody. I appreciate the time you spend hanging out, talking about video games, listening to some chiptunes. And if I could just end with a little bit of encouragement, whatever it is that you're doing this week, whatever it is that you're struggling with, and believe me, I know we're all struggling, I hope it goes well for you. Whatever happens, don't give up, because I'm rooting for you, and I'll see you next week.